Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold stream. And that's right, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, I made it to Diamond 1 with an anime deck. If you don't know, Phantom Knights are technically an anime deck. They were used by the character in Zexal, who I don't remember because I don't care. But I do like this deck. It is currently like tier 3 on the tier list, and this is the build that we are playing. Now, we can play a 40 card or a 60 card list. I decided to get to Diamond with a 40 card list, and I should say Diamond 1, and I had a very difficult time. But yeah, let me just hop into the card by card and the explanation. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the hand traps. We're running 1 Effect Veiler, 2 Maxi. I think Maxi is less valuable just because so many people are playing either the outs to Maxi or they are playing Flunder. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's nice. It really is still good to have, but because of how many outs, I think it's better to cut it down a little bit. We're playing triple Ash Blossom as well. We're playing the 1 Nibiru and the 1 Imperm. Now, I know what you're saying, Imperm conflicts with Shade, but the thing is, I never had this come up, not once. Like, genuinely. You can also just use Imperm on, like, if you end up going first, you can go Shade Brigadine and then set the Imperm. So it's never really a bad thing. And then the reason we're playing a lot of the one-ofs, such as the Effect Veiler, the Imperm, and the Nibiru, is because we're running 2 Crossout Designator. Should you be playing 3? No, this card's kind of bricky. I really found that just having 2 of it seemed like enough, and more often than not, I didn't even want to have it in my hand. So there's that. Moving on, we have the Phantom Knight cards. We're running quite a few of them. Originally, I was playing additional, like, level 3s, such as the Emergency Teleport and the Psychic Wielder and the other one. But instead, I decided to cut them, and I had a little bit better luck with my hands. They seemed to be more well-constructed. Anyway, so we are playing the 2 Ancient Cloak, we are playing the 2 Silent Boot, or sorry, the 3 Silent Boots, the 1 Ragged Gloves, and the 2 Torn Scales that we are allowed. Realistically, this card is absolutely crazy, and it should definitely be played at 3, but alas, we cannot. So all in all, yeah, Phantom Knights are still very good, even post-ban list. But with that being said, they are a little bit weaker because their best card is Hit. Moving on, we are also playing the Adventure Engine, the 2 Water Enchantress, the 2 Radivera Masir, the 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, 1 Fateful Adventure, and 1 Dracoback. And then, of course, we are also running DPE. So, Celestial, Dasher, and the 2 Fusion Destiny, with Verte and DPE in the extra. And then we have a whole bunch of other just useful cards. The Harpy's Feather Duster, the Foolish Burial, the Reinforcement of the Army, 2 Called By, 2 Crossout, 2 Droplet, and then for the traps, we are running 1 Wing. This actually comes up quite a lot. Being able to gain attack, as well as, more importantly, protect from card destruction, or I should say battle destruction, is very nice. And it's just another way to, like, you can dump a card in order to banish, or sorry, you can dump this in order to banish it and bring back one of your Phantom Knights, which I did quite a lot. And then 2 Fogblade. I didn't think that I needed 3. I instead ran the 1 Ring. And then, of course, the 1 Shade Brigadine to extend your combos. Moving on to the extra deck, we have the 1 DPE, as previously mentioned. We have 4 our Xyz, 1 Leviair, and 1 Breaksword. Breaksword, I feel like I wanted... Oftentimes, it felt like I wanted a target for a level 4 that I could go into. Now, obviously, I could have gone into, like, Rongo Nimiad, but in all honesty, I didn't want to play Rongo, and I think it's pretty bad because you kind of need to go just for Rongo, and then you just kind of hope that your opponent doesn't do anything else, or it has, like, an out to it. Granted, it's very hard to do that, to have an out to Rongo, but there are ways to just prevent you from getting there a lot more easily, so we didn't play it. Then 1 Downerd and 1 Zeus for our last Xyz. As for the Link monsters, we have 1 Link Spider to link away the token, as well as the Shade Brigadine to get effect monsters for our Verte Anaconda. We have 1 Almirage as well, because there are a lot of monsters that can be normal summoned in order to go into an Almirage to get them into the grave and get their graveyard effects. We have 1 Cherubini. This card's absolutely crazy. If you can make this card, you will be able to send the Water Enchantress 100% of the time, or you will be able to send something like your other Phantom Knights that maybe need to get into rotation. Absolutely crazy card. Moving on, we have the 1 IP Masquerena, the 1 Verte, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, Rusty Bardiche. This card is interesting because the more I made it, the more I felt like it wasn't actually all that useful. Being able to send a Phantom Knight to set a Fogblade is very nice, but the biggest issue is that it can't be used as link material, which means you can't go into something like an Apollousa. Having Apollousa is also very nice because, I mean, it's Apollousa. It's pretty self-explanatory, and it's pretty easy to make with something like an IP Masquerena in order to protect it as well. And then we have 1 Axis Code Talker and 1 Underworld Goddess to finish out the lineup. So let's hop into the replays and show you how this deck performs. Before we get on to the rest of the video, did you know that 70% of the people who watch my content aren't subscribed? If you end up liking the content, consider subscribing. You can always unsubscribe later if you end up not liking it. Anyway, let's get on to the rest of the video. Alright, so I had a lot of really interesting games with this deck just because I played it so much. But we're going to start off with this one. We're going to start with the Rite of Aramesir in order to grab ourselves a token and go for the Faithful Adventure. Next up, we're going to go Reinforcement of the Army to grab the Torn Scales, and then we'll normal summon it to grab the Dracoback. Then we will use the effect of Faithful Adventure, which will get ashed. I do want to cross out this. The reason being, having an Omni Negate is very nice, just in general, right? So banishing something banishing the Ash to negate it with the crossout, to get an Omni Negate seems a little bit better. And since we do this under Nibiru, like before Nibiru can be activated, I also think that it's worth it here. So yeah, we'll just grab up the Wandering Griffin Rider and pitch the Dracoback. Dracoback will then equip to the token, obviously, and out comes the Wandering Griffin Rider. I'm sure that you guys are already sick of this, but it's going to stick around until these cards get limited. Anyway, we're going to go for Cherubini, and since we already have the Adventure Engine online, we don't need to go for the Water Enchantress here, which, yes, you can send the Water Enchantress for cost to the graveyard, which means even if they were to negate your Cherubini with something like an Imperm or an Effect Veiler, you're still going to be able to send whatever it is. You don't get your attack boost, which doesn't really matter. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, because we already had the Adventure Engine online, we're going to send Cloak to the grave. We're going to banish the Cloak here in order to search out Shade Brigandine. Now, Cloak can be banished from the graveyard in order to add any Phantom Knight card from your deck to your hand. Silent Boots can add spells, and Torn Scales, when a card is banished, a Phantom Knight card is banished from your grave, while he's in the grave, he special summons himself back and then gets banished. So we're going to add the Shade Brigandine, and then we are going to special summon the Phantom Knights here. Now, Shade Brigandine can be activated the turn it is set if you don't have any traps in your grave. So we go for the Shade Brigandine here in order to go into Rusty Bardiche. Now, Rusty Bardiche has a very powerful effect. It allows you to send a Phantom Knight to set a Phantom Knight spell or trap. So we send the Ragged Gloves, which can send any card, any Phantom Knight card. So we send the Fogblade. Fogblade will then be activated in order to special summon out the Silent Boots. Now we can go for our Leviair, sorry, which will then detach a material. So, one thing that going into Xyz is really good for in this deck is it allows you to prevent your monsters from being banished. So, both our Torn Scales as well as our Silent Boots would have been banished had they left the field, unless they were attached to an Xyz. So that's why we play Leviair. It does kind of add extension, but it's just kind of the same amount of materials on field. So, realistically, the reason for it is to get those materials back into the graveyard. There are a few plays that you can do, like, for example, you can banish a Water Enchantress, or if it gets, like, Called Bide or something like that, you can bring the Water Enchantress back to get it back into the grave. So there's a few things that are useful to do with the Leviair, but most of the time it's just to get those extra materials from your field instead of into the banish zone, into the grave, and it recycles one of your other banished monsters. So overall, just a really advantageous card to go into. And then we're going to link them off for a Predaplant Verte Anaconda, make a DPE, set this Droplet, banish our... Oh, hold on, let's go through this first. We're then going to banish ourselves the Silent Boots in order to grab Wing here, and then we're going to set everything and pass. So, the total number of interactions are 1 Omni Negate, 1 non-target pop, 1 Fogblade, which is a target continuous negation. We have 1 Wings, which is a protection for any of our monsters from battle, so we can protect any one of our monsters from battle, as well as boost by 500 attack. and then we have a Forbidden Droplets. So, all in all, 5 forms of interaction. Well, 4 forms of interaction, 1 protection. All in all, pretty solid. Our opponent's going to start with Rite of Aram here, and we're just going to let this happen. And then down comes the Ashana, and I realize, okay, at this point, I'm going to pop the token so that they don't have a way to get to their Omni Negate. We're going to activate our DPE as well. Then they are going to normal summon out a Red Rose in order to go into Baron. I'm just going to let this happen again, and out comes the Rox Rose, out comes the Basil Rose Shoot. They're going to go to the battle phase, and they're going to attack the token, not realizing that our Fateful Adventure protects it, so there's that. And then they're going to walk into our credit plant, there's the Anaconda. I'm going to let that happen because, in all honesty, I don't really see any threats up until this point. And while, yes, it would be nice to go Forbidden Droplets, send away the Predaplant, we can also send away our Rusty Bardiche because he can be brought back with any of our traps. Except for Shade Brigandine. Our traps have another effect with both wings and the Fog Blade, where you can banish them from the grave in order to special back another Phantom Knight card. So there you go. That's also why I like playing wings, just because it isn't a continuous effect. So it's not going to randomly stick on the field. You can just wings, target something, boost it, and then it goes to the grave, so you can bring something back if need be. Anyway, so they're going to pitch their Chiwen, and then go into Crystron Halqifibrax. So this is the card that we need to negate, and I'm going to use the Fog Blade, which they are going to let resolve. And then they'll go to the end phase. The reason they let this resolve is because they are planning to use its second effect in order to tag out, and in all honesty, I'm okay with that. We're going to actually draw for turn a Torn Scales, which we are going to then Dasher out, and then we will bring back our DPE. We're going to go for Dracoback to send away the Baron, which they will then chain the Negate, which we will then chain our Negate, which then they will chain their Hulk. Sorry. I gotta let this happen. But yeah, out comes Danglong, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. They're going to activate the effect. I don't really want them to have the effect, so I do negate it with the Droplet, sending away the Torn Scales, since, again, Torn Scales is pretty good. We're going to then banish to draw 2, and we draw a Fusion Destiny, which is pretty funny, but we're just going to send that to the grave and grab to our hand the Wandering Griffin Rider. Now, Griffin Rider can only be used once per turn, so I'm not going to actually activate its effect to special summon it again, unless I need the extra material or something like that. Anyway, so because we got to banish the Cloak in order to add the Silent Boots, we are then going to special summon out the Torn Scales, which will then allow us to special summon the Boots, and now we can go for the Phantom Knights of Breaksword. Now, because this was summoned to a zone Bardiche points to, it can pop a card, so we pop the Yang Zing. Now they're going to special summon out 2 of their monsters, one from grave, one from deck, which is fine with me, because we are going to then pop our Breaksword to pop one of them and activate our Breaksword to pop one of them and the Dracoback, which will then bring back the Dracoback, and then we are going to activate the DPE in order to pop our Breaksword and their last monster, and then bring back the 2 monsters off of the Breaksword effect. At this point, we will switch the Token Collector to attack position and go into IP Masquerena. Down comes their Wandering Griffin Rider, which they searched because I was about to go to battle. At this point, I realized, okay, I haven't normaled, so I can increase the attack of our Phantom Knights with the first effect of our Cloak, and then we can special summon back one of our monsters in order to go into an access code. At that point, that's well over lethal. Good game. Alright, so that first duel was quite long, but it did show you what you can do going first. So what happens when we go second? Well, first of all, we drew Nibiru against Live Twin. So, but we do actually do something really interesting with this Nibiru that really helps us out later. So, they are going to go through their plays and just end up on a Nibiru token because, of course, they are. They're Live Twin. There's not a whole lot more that they can do other than get absolutely owned by a Nibiru. Sad day. Yep, away goes their entire field. They're going to set one and pass, and since this is most likely something like an Imperm, since they don't really play traps other than Imperm in their deck, I am playing around that assumption, okay? It's also given me all of the activation requirement and times for Nibiru as well. So we're going to go for the Fateful Adventure here to try and search out the Omni Negate, and it doesn't look like it's working, so that's fine. We're going to grab our Draco back, we're going to return that monster to the hand, and then we are just going to attack in for 5,000 damage with our Ancient Cloak being able to get over the defense position Nibiru token, which had 0 defense. Then we're going to go into Almirage to get the Cloak into the grave, so that we can banish the Cloak in order to add the Shade Brigandine. Then we're going to set the Shade in order to special summon it. Then we can link it off for a Link Spider to get an effect monster, since it's not an effect monster. Then we can make a Predaplant Verte Anaconda. Now, most people do not negate the effect of the Predaplant Verte Anaconda that allows you to change a monster to Dark type. Most of them will only negate the Fusion Summon. Now, the reason this is so important is because if our monster is not Dark, we cannot end on a Rusty Bardiche, right? Because Rusty requires 2 Dark monsters. Right now we have an Earth, a Light, and a Dark. But we can use this Predaplant Verte Anaconda and actually use its first effect to change a monster to Dark type. Then we can go for the Fusion Summon. Our opponent decides to negate here, like a mistake. But of course. And then we can link away this Nibiru in order to go into a Rusty Bardiche. We can then send a Boot in order to set a Fog Blade. We can activate the Boots in order to grab up ourselves a Wing, so that we have that additional protection as well. So now we have a Veiler, a Wings, and a Fog Blade all ready for us. And on the follow-up, we can also search for another Fateful Adventure. So all in all, pretty solid. They're going to get their secret password in order to search another card. They're going to search out their Kiss-a-Kill. They're going to normal summon the Kiss-a-Kill, and I'm going to effect Veiler that. And at this point, they realize that the game is over, so they just go to battle and just allow us to win the game from here. So I'm not going to elongate this too much. I believe I draw a monster for turn, and yeah, so we go for the Fateful Adventure here, just to try and get an Omni Negate in case they have something. And then I realize, okay, they have 1 card in hand. There's no chance that they have anything. I just attack in. Good game. Alright, and this game was actually my rank up game, and my opponent chose to let me go first. So I kind of figured, alright, they're most likely playing something like Numeron, but I can still make this work. So I'm going to normal summon the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales in order to pitch the Ragged Gloves that we had in order to send a Cloak. We're going to banish the Cloak in order to add to our hand a Silent Boots. We are then going to special summon the Silent Boots, and then we are going to go for a Cherubini. And then going to activate its effect in order to banish, or in order to send the Water Enchantress, so that we can get the Fateful token into rotation. Then we are going to banish the Ragged Gloves in order to send the Fog Blade, so that we can special summon back the Torn Scales, as well as the Boots, in order to go for a Leviair. So out comes Leviair here, and we're going to activate the effect to get Cloak back into rotation. Then we will link these 2 off for a Predaplant Verte Anaconda, and then out comes the Imperm. This time they actually activated it correctly, so there's that. We are then going to go for the Shade Brigandine, and I decided to go for an Apollousa here. The reason for it was because I really didn't feel like a Rusty Bardiche was as useful, given the fact that we only had Wings, I believe, to search. So I was like, we already have the Fog Blade in hand. Rusty Bardiche, sure, is helpful, but we already have the Fog Blade, so there's no real point. And we have the Rite of Aramasir for follow-up. We're going to banish the Boots as well to grab up Wings. So we're going to set the Wings and the Fog Blade and pass the turn. Honestly, not the greatest, but not the worst. Okay, so down comes the Godarla, and down comes Numeron Network. And I realize at this point, I've already won the game. Yeah. So, yeah, down comes all 4 of these guys. They're going to activate their limiter removal. They're going to proceed to the battle phase. And at this point, I will activate my Fog Blade. Because, yes, this guy can attack. That's fine. You can get your attack boost. That's fine. But you deal 700 to yourself. There you go. If you don't know, real quick, let me read Fog Blade for you. Activate this card by targeting an effect monster on the field. Negate that face-up monster's effects. That face-up monster cannot attack. Also, monsters cannot target that face-up monster for attacks. So, what I ended up doing is I targeted up my own Godarla in order to negate its effects, but more importantly, it now can no longer be targeted for an attack. Meaning, all of these guys aren't going to attack me. So, yeah, real good use of limiter removal there, sir. Anyway, they go to the end phase and pass the turn on in Avramax, which is not protected by anything. Anyway, I draw Foolish Burial for turn, and my opponent realizes that the game is over. That's Diamond 1, baby. So, all in all, I think that this deck is quite formidable. It has a lot of things going for it. Most notably, it has a very solid synergy with the adventure stuff, thanks to Cherubini and the fact that Water Enchantress is for some reason a level 3. Sorry, I'd said 4, but 3. Yeah, so being able to dump a Water Enchantress, which can then get the entire adventure engine online, is very, very solid. It's not quite as strong as Prank Kids, just due to the fact that Prank Kids basically do what Phantom Knights do, just better. They recycle, they summon spam, they're able to use the adventure engine, and honestly, their disruption being Battle Butler twice is absolutely insane. Most decks can't handle that, so there you go. But with that being said, if you do want to play a top-tier anime deck, this is the deck. It's super fun. You can play it at 60 cards as well as at 40. There are so many different lines that you can go for. As you saw, we were able to summon out Rusty Bardiche several times, but we also, we summoned Apo. We were able to summon Verte Anaconda. One time I used my IP Masquerena to link away something into an Underworld Goddess. In order to out, I believe it was an Armor Master. There are so many different cool things that you get to do with this deck, and I would highly suggest just playing this deck while you can, before it gets banned again, or something like that. Yeah, there you go. Very fun. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy this episode. If you did, a like is very much so appreciated, and if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.